Good evening, and thank you for attending our second public town hall on COVID. We appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening. Whether you're doing it through Zoom, by phone, or via our live stream on YouTube, this is really an excellent opportunity for us to discuss the numerous steps that St. Albert has undertaken to respond to the pandemic, as well as the planning that is going into the recovery phase that will help us transition into the post-pandemic period. It also gives us a chance to hear from you and the questions you have on how we as a community are moving forward. If you joined us for our first town hall, thank you so much for coming back. And if this is your first online town hall with us, welcome. I'm going to now introduce you to our moderator for this evening to go over some housekeeping items.
Good evening. My name is Kristen and I will be moderating this evening's town hall. A few housekeeping items to keep in mind during tonight's town hall. This event is being recorded and will be available at stalbert.ca/townhall afterwards. Audio and video will be muted for all participants who are on the Zoom platform. Audio is also muted for those listening on the phone. If you are having any technical difficulties, please use the chat within Zoom and one of our IT support will help you through that. Now I will turn it over to Mayor Herron for some opening remarks.
Thank you, Kristen. Okay, so late last week, the province announced its relaunch strategy. Like you, I'm really looking forward to some semblance of normalcy. While we have all done an amazing job to date to support the province's actions to flatten the curve, this is not the time to become complacent. To be successful, we must remain vigilant and continue to follow the Government of Alberta's public health measures, including physical distancing and good hygiene practices. A couple of weeks ago, I announced I was forming a task force to guide the city through our recovery. Thank you to everyone who has applied. The response has been unbelievable, with over 30 people applying for 7 seats on the committee. We've seen some interest from business leaders, community leaders, and even a former deputy minister and former deputy premier. That shows how committed St. Albertans are to the success of our businesses and our community. If you would still like to apply, the deadline is tomorrow. Information is at stalbert.ca under Recovery Task Force. We expect to form the task force in the next couple of weeks. So this pandemic has been very expensive for the city. One question I want to address up front, as I have been asked it throughout this crisis, is how the cost of this pandemic will affect taxpayers. I don't want our residents to cover the deficit the city is facing. Council continues to meet to find savings to support our emergency efforts. As well, I was asked to present on the Federal Standing Committee on Finance on April 24th regarding our city's response to COVID-19. All 3 orders of government have a role to play in supporting Canadians. At the city, we're committed to working with our provincial and federal partners to create more certainty around recovery, our next steps, and the financial implications. For this evening's town hall meeting, myself, Chief Administrative Officer Kevin Scopel, and the Director of Emergency Management from the city's Emergency Operations Center, Percy Janke, will be answering questions related to St. Albert's response. The experiences of our CAO, Kevin Scopel, who was in Fort McMurray during the wildfires, uniquely positioned him to have us prepared to take on our own emergencies here in St. Albert. Thank you, Kevin, for your leadership and advice, especially as we begin discussing our recovery efforts. And to Fort McMurray, our heart goes out to that community. Not only are they facing the same pandemic that we are, but they are also recovering from the flood and their #1 industry being devastated. We wish them a speedy recovery. St. Albert stands with Fort McMurray. The Director of Emergency Management, Percy Janke, is leading the efforts in our Emergency Operations Center, which is set up as the focal point of St. Albert's quick response to COVID-19. Our EOC is aligned with Alberta Health Service orders, and they are also addressing unique St. Albert challenges. For this evening's town hall meeting, we will be answering questions related to St. Albert's response. We welcome questions about utilities, emergency services, and taxes, which are the purview of a city. As you know, this is a public health emergency, not a local emergency. The city is following closely the ever-evolving advice from Alberta Health Services. We, meaning Percy, can attempt to answer questions about how many people are sick and similar health-related questions, but those questions are best directed to Alberta Health's website for answers. Questions relating to wage subsidies, business loans, and income tax, which fall under the federal response, should be directed up to the federal government for answers. Kristen, if you could actually please share the graphic indicating the different levels of government and their responsibilities. So we have links to all of these sources of information on our website. I'm now going to turn it over to Kevin to give a quick update on initiatives the city and your council have undertaken over the last few months.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in an effort to support our residents and businesses during the challenges of COVID-19, the city has taken a number of steps to provide support. Some of the major initiatives to date include utility bills were deferred for residential and commercial accounts for March, April, and May. The April 1st and July 1st tax penalties were canceled for taxes in arrear from 2019. For 2020 taxes, the payment deadline's been deferred from June 30th to September 30th. Transit fares were eliminated until May 31st. To keep businesses informed about the services and supports available from all levels of government, information has been posted on the city website. As well, we have done a survey in partnership with the Chamber of our local businesses and the challenges they're facing and the supports that they're looking for. And we're actually doing a second survey on that very shortly here. The city-sponsored Things That Are Open website that promotes the innovative ways local businesses are finding to serve our community and lets our residents know which of our businesses are still open and how they're operating. That's at stalbert.thingsthatAreopen.com. And we also introduced a temporary change to our noise bylaw to allow for deliveries to be made 24 hours a day for essential services. This measure was taken to help ensure all essential services and stores can be stocked in a timely manner. And then fast forwarding a little bit to earlier this week at the May 4th council meeting, it was decided that all existing closures and cancellations for city facilities that fall under public health orders remain closed to the public for as long as the public health order is in place. So this pertains to indoor and outdoor recreation and cultural facilities operated by the city and its partners and includes booking for events or activities. It was also determined that all scheduled city events that fall under the existing public health orders regarding restrictions on mass gatherings and requirements for physical distancing be canceled and no new events be allowed until the public health order is lifted, with the exception of the St. Albert Farmers Market, which will proceed. Council also decided that the city's Emergency Advisory Committee has the authority to increase or decrease the restrictions, provided the Emergency Advisory Committee is responding to a public health order or upon the recommendation of the Chief Medical Officer of Health or any other branch of the government of Alberta. Also at the May 4th council meeting, budget adjustments were approved that will help the city offset the projected deficit of $4.6 to $7 million due to COVID-19. So we will be redirecting over $539,000 previously allocated to the Library and the Arts and Heritage Foundation to our stabilization reserve. And we're also directing $387,000 from assessment growth revenue to the growth reserve as well. Or sorry, stabilization reserve. As mentioned by the mayor at the council meeting on Monday, the city is also looking at a 7% reduction overall through efficiencies and savings, so that the incremental burden on taxpayers due to the COVID-19 pandemic is minimized and ideally eliminated. We expect to provide this information in our June update on ongoing financial scenarios, which will be presented to council. As well, at our special council meeting coming up on May 11th at 9 o'clock in the morning, council will debate motions on the final tax requirement for 2020 on how we will approach splitting the requirement between residents and businesses. So as we move forward, difficult conversations do need to be had, and it's important to investigate all options that are available to the city to ensure a successful recovery.
Thank you very much, Kevin. We will now begin the Q&A period of this town hall. Thank you to those who have submitted questions in advance. You can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to submit questions by typing them into the field and hitting submit. Please use the Q&A feature and not the chat to provide your questions. Please note that we will not be able to answer all of your questions during this event, but we will do our best to answer them throughout the coming weeks on the stalbert.ca COVID-19 website, or you can call 780-459-19 1500 if you are looking for additional information or have additional questions. We will now start this evening's Q&A off with a question for Mayor Herron that came in advance. So our first question is, how long will it take to recover from this?
I think that's probably the magic, the $1 million question, I guess. I think it depends on how you define recover. I think the virus, hopefully will be worked its way through our community quite quickly, and God willing, there's no second wave to this pandemic. But the recovery from some of the economic hits is probably a much longer term answer, and there's no specific timelines on any of this. And then there's probably maybe even longer lasting psychosocial aspects that people are going to need to recover from. So I mean, that's kind of the purpose of the recovery task force. The vision for it is to be active for 18, maybe 24 months. And, if it needs to be longer, then we can ask these volunteers to stick around longer. But, I think there will be stages to this recovery, and I can't wait to get through it.
Thank you very much. It looks like Kevin would also like to add to this answer. So I'll turn it over to Kevin here.
Yes, thank you. To add to Mayor Herron's comments, the report will outline opportunities to help residents and businesses and community partners recover from COVID. As mentioned earlier, the city is actively recruiting for 7 members of the public for the task force who have relevant governance, business, nonprofit, or volunteer experience. They'll join the mayor and 2 councillors on the task force. So again, the application deadline for the task force is tomorrow, and we encourage community members to apply by visiting the city's homepage at stalbert.ca.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Our next question is also for the mayor. How many COVID-19 cases do we currently have in St. Albert?
Currently, and it's been pretty flat for the last couple of weeks. I try to post them on social media every morning, and we've been at about 30 total cases for the last number of probably weeks even. I think currently we only have 1 active case, which is good news. It's always nice to see the active cases go to recovered. So wish those families well, and I'm glad they're doing well. And fortunately, we've had no deaths in the city of St. Albert. But that can sometimes come with a bit of a catch-22, because when I see that we're doing really well and our numbers are stable, there's a possibility, I won't say for sure, that some residents can feel complacent on what they need to be doing. So so these are health questions, and we don't know if these people are in the hospital. We don't know the severity of any of their illnesses, because those are really in the purview of Alberta Health, and they are not releasing a lot of that information for privacy. So I think we just need to continue to maintain that physical distance, wash our hands, stay home if we have any symptoms, and in the next little while, it might be important to download the Alberta Trace app, because that way, if you are in contact with somebody who has tested positive, they will be able to contact you very quickly and contact the people that you've been in contact with very quickly, and that will really prevent a second outbreak.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Our next question is for Percy. When will sports fields be open?
That's a really good question. The sports fields currently are open for spontaneous use and are being maintained to current park standards. So it's really open for spontaneous use. So anybody can go out and use those fields. We really encourage all our residents to use the incredible green spaces within the city and the trail system, because we have some of the really nicest amenities within the province here, within our community. But for sports fields and sports partners, sports teams, user groups, there's provincial and national organization that guide those sports, as well as the chief medical officer of health. And the medical officer of health at the current time has not recommended team sports and team activities. They're kind of recommending that everybody follow physical distancing rule and ensure that you're not using shared devices to reduce touch points where transmission of disease is more potential. So those activities do carry more risk, and as such, we really recommend those teams and team organizers follow the recommendations of the Chief Medical Officer of Health and their provincial and national sport organizations.
Thank you very much, Percy. Our next submitted question is for the mayor again. So what kinds of activities am I allowed to do outside right now?
That's a great question. I think the list is long, and I probably will not mention all of them. So Kevin or Percy, if you want to jump in, but absolutely get outside. The trail system is open, as Percy was saying, so walks are great. I think there's probably some responsibility for every pedestrian and cyclist out on the trail system to move aside when you're passing in opposite directions. If you're going over one of the pedestrian bridges, maybe just let one group cross and you wait on the side, those kind of things. I saw a lot of people out on the river this last weekend. It's probably 40 or 50 kayaks and canoes going by, so that's completely allowed and encouraged. I was asked the question from a resident if they could take their child to the playground, not use equipment, but bring your own shovels and buckets, and they can play in the sand. And that's a great idea. You can take your family to any field, toss the frisbee, toss a football. Those kind of things are great to do outside. Unfortunately, some of the public recreation areas like tennis courts and pickleball are not open at this time, but we do look forward to opening them up as soon as we feel confident and Alberta Health is behind us in that decision. So I don't know if you guys want to add anything that I might have missed at outdoor sports or activities. Paint your sidewalk. Those are the best.
It looks like Percy would like to add to that.
So in terms of things, the medical officer of health has kind of indicated that activities that you do as an individual, so activities like cycling, walking, running, where you're not in contact with other individuals, are those kind of activities that they truly recommend. And there's lots of things that you can do like that, to keep yourself active.
Perfect, thank you so much. So we'll go to our next question here from submitted by a resident. And this next question is for Kevin. Will any events be held this summer?
Thank you. So as per the May 4th council meeting, all scheduled city events are canceled that fall into the scope of the existing public health orders regarding restrictions on mass gathering and physical distancing. So no new events will be allowed subject to the provincial direction. Of course, as mentioned earlier, the only exception to this is the St. Albert Farmers Market. So the city is working with the chamber to support that activity. We're gonna, again, it may be a little different in form, but we're gonna do our best and make sure that it adheres to the Alberta Health Guidelines. So I think you'll see some more details available from the Chamber of Commerce in the coming weeks here.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Our next question is for the mayor. So we've had a few questions about tax increases and the economic impact of COVID-19, including, with all the impacts of COVID-19, why is there a proposed increase in property and business taxes, as well as the economic impact of COVID-19 has devastated many residents and businesses. It is imperative they receive ongoing tax relief and not just deferrals. Does the City of St. Albert have the fortitude to make the necessary spending cuts, including personnel, to provide this much needed relief? Please give examples. So I'll turn it over to the mayor to answer those.
Well, that's actually a really big question. And so the first one was, why is there a proposed property tax increase? I think residents need to understand that budget process and the tax increase of 2.5% was done pre-COVID. It was done in December. And a big chunk of that tax increase came from a 1.5%, I call it a capital levy, that we decided to do even earlier in the summer. We had made that decision because we were keenly aware that we didn't have enough money in our reserves to take care of the basic capital maintenance of the city. We call it RMR, the repair, maintain, and replace budget. So if we had not done that, we would have fallen into the red, which would have meant that sidewalks wouldn't have been replaced and roads not fixed as needed. So that decision was made. And then we also got hit a bit in the provincial budget with a loss in revenue from photo radar fines and some of that. So we did come up with a 2.5% tax increase. That was made in December. So there's still ongoing conversations with me and my 6 colleagues on council about what to do with that. And there's a couple of options proposed by various council members. I think it's important to understand that if we take away the 1.5% tax levy, then we will be facing a deficit, and we'll have choices of lowering our service level, so the roads will be rougher or the sidewalks will have more cracks, or we will have to raise taxes even more significantly next year to make up for that. So these are the choices council has to make. And then there's a conversation about maybe giving some extra relief to businesses instead of the residences, because they are going through such a hard time as well. On May 4th, just a couple of days ago, we did have some savings that we found. We found some adjustments with the Library and Arts and Heritage Foundation. So thank you to those 2 groups, heavily funded by the city, and they came up with some significant savings to help us cover off the deficit. And then, of course, Kevin Scoble mentioned it earlier that he's asking each department to find 7% across the board to try to help. We've laid off staff, and we will probably need to re-examine how we rehire them and make adjustments there. There's a lot of things that Kevin and council are working on together to lower our expenses, because the revenue is just not there anymore.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
So did I get that all? I want to make sure I answered the whole question.
Yeah, the key things we're looking at the different spending cuts that could be considered, including personnel, which you mentioned, the increases to taxes. So yes, I do think you covered it all.
And I think that's the point that I need to close off with, is we're not done the conversations. On Monday, we will be having a special council meeting to have further conversations on this year's tax increase.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm just going to use this opportunity really quickly to remind everyone that's on our town hall here that a recording of this town hall will be available afterwards at stalbert.ca/townhall. Additionally, please remember to submit your questions through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And if we don't have an answer for your question right now, we will be sure to get an answer on that page, stalbert.ca/townhall, for you as soon as we can in the coming weeks. So we'll go to our next question here. So our next question is for Kevin. Can you please let us know what relief measures are implemented in the city of St. Albert to help its citizens facing financial difficulty to deal with municipal tax payment deadlines?
Okay, thank you. So council approved a bylaw canceling the April 1st and July 1st, 2020 tax penalties from the 2019 year. Council's also approved deferring the payment deadline for the 2020 taxes from June 30th to September 30th. This will give all property owners an additional 90 days to pay their taxes. And then, of course, we've done similarly on the utility bills for April through May as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Our next question is for the mayor. So what is open right now in terms of city facilities?
In terms of city, I think Percy mentioned it a little bit earlier, that all the trails and the sports fields are just not for organized sports. City owns all those. And just today, we have the Emergency Advisory Committee. So on May 4th at council, council delegated some decision-making to the Emergency Advisory Committee, which consists of myself, Councillor Ken Mackay, and Councillor Natalie Jolly, City Manager Percy. We meet at least once a week, sometimes more often. And today we decided that it would probably be appropriate to open up the Blessed platform and gazebo, where gazebos are all around the city, and many of the picnic shelters as well, because we know the weather is nice, and we felt that risk on those is small. And so please go and enjoy those few amenities that we just opened up today. There is a plan coming for a phased relaunch of some of these municipal facilities. But I guess I just would always remind you too that make sure that you're observing your physical distance when you attend these things. And when, if you can carry hand sanitizer, please do. And if not, make sure you wash your hands as soon as you get home.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Our next question is for Kevin. If parks are closed, why are the speed limit restrictions still in place?
Sorry. So the parks aren't closed. The playground structures within them are closed at the moment, but the parks are not closed. They are open for spontaneous use. So playground zones remain in effect. School zone speed limits are not in effect as students are not attending school for sessions currently.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Our next question is for Percy. How do we maintain appropriate physical distancing on the trails when walking?
So it's actually, if you're walking down the trail, you just observe physical distancing with others. So space yourself appropriately. The province has actually talked about incidental contact, and that means just walking through a space where another person is, and that's not considered when you're passing in opposite directions, not considered a significant hazard or risk to individuals. But you need to share those spaces responsibly and alert others that you're in the area. So if you're riding a bike, you can use your bell or your horn to warn people that you're passing so that we can share the space appropriately, or use your voice. And the other thing is, if you're from the same household, you're in the same family unit, that 2 meter physical distancing doesn't apply in the same manner to people of the same household. And that's where some of those space distancing problems can be reduced a little bit.
Thank you very much, Percy. Our next question is for Kevin. Now that stage 1 for the province starts on May 14th, will transit reflect that, or will transit still be on the modified Saturday schedule?
So St. Albert Transit is monitoring ridership regularly, certainly to gauge opportunities to resume conventional scheduling. So again, the transit service is currently at the level it is due to the decline in ridership, but we are watching it very closely, and when we see things starting to uptake again, we'll be adjusting the schedule accordingly.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Our next question is for the mayor. When is the library opening?
I think everybody's really anxious to have the library back up and running. I think it's, first of all, it's important to understand that the closing and opening of the library is not a decision that's made by Mr. Scoble or the City Council. It's operated by its own governing board. So it was their decision to close it, although it was recommended and enforced by the province eventually, but it will be their decision to open it as well. We will have to open up City Hall at the same time. I think they are allowed to open in phase 2 of the plan. So when they do decide, I'm sure Mr. Scoble and Peter Bailey, the director of the library, will be working really closely to make sure that all safety measures are in place. But I would guess, and I can say with full confidence, that the library and the library board are anxious to open up their doors, and because they would play a key role, especially in some of the recovery efforts that we will have. So looking forward to seeing them back up and running, both locations.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I have another question for you, so we'll just leave you up there spotlighted. How will the city make sure businesses that are opening are following the rules set in place by the province?
This is a tough one. I gotta say, I get this question every day. I was at Superstore and they weren't social distancing. I get it every day. So I think it's important to understand that these decisions are and guidelines on how businesses operate is operated and mandated by the provincial government. So there is some good links on our city website about what they need to do, and if you do have any concerns, you can find those links there. So I'm actually going to have to read this. So under the public health order from the province, anyone putting their families, neighbors, or other Albertans at risk may be subject to a fine. If you know someone who is not following legally requirements, public health orders, follow these government of Alberta steps. So take proper precautions and distance yourself from the person to limit your risk of exposure if they have symptoms. Remind the person that not following public health orders is against the law and puts people at risk. Submit a complaint through Alberta Health Services online form, and that form is available on our website. Residents can also contact St. Albert Municipal Enforcement directly at the joint St. Albert RCMP line, which is 780-458-7700. I think it's probably important to remember that these businesses are eager to open, but most are going to be very cautious. Lots of phone calls from businesses about where they can get their personal protective equipment, what are the rules, because they want to follow the rules too. So this is not going to be an easy task for everyone, including the city, to help monitor, but I think we need to exhibit a bit of patience, and I guess we're going to have to try to support some of these local businesses as they reemerge.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mayor. So just a reminder, if you have questions, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to submit them. We are planned currently to go until 8 if we have questions to go until then. So please just get those questions in so that we can present them to our panelists here. So we'll go on to our next question here. Our next question is going to be for Percy. What is the projected forecast for Alberta Health for cases in St. Albert this summer?
So we don't truly have a projection of what is going to happen in St. Albert. These models have been done by Alberta Health and by the province, and they do it on a larger scale than the city of St. Albert. What they do estimate for the province is 596 people will require hospitalization when the virus reaches its peak. And this is truly a reduction from the scenario that they had earlier on this. You can actually find modeling information on the provincial website, alberta.ca/COVID-19. And that website will give you more information on the provincial modeling and more details on that model itself.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Percy. Our next question is for Kevin. Why have city expenses listed on the consolidated budget publicly released in Council's Monday agenda inflated by 150% compared to the approved December budget? And specifically, why has emergency services expenditures doubled?
Oh, that's quite a long question. So there's actually two different figures. The December 2020 budget shows $207,101,000, which is only referring to the consolidated operating budget for the municipal and utility. The May 4th presentation to council shows $310,306,000, but this figure includes capital budgets for the municipal and utility. The operating column in the May 4th attachment is $207,518,000. The difference of $387,000 relates to new assessment growth, which council motion to be transferred to the stabilization reserve that we talked about earlier this evening. For emergency services, the consolidated number of $72,955,000 includes $35.6 million, again differentiating between operating and capital. So it includes $72,955,000, which includes $35.6 million of capital, primarily related to the new fire hall being planned for the future.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kevin. Our next question is for the mayor. So with the warm weather here, will playgrounds be open?
Eventually, I guess is the answer. So the decision to shut the playgrounds was made at the end of March, and that included all our public playgrounds and the ones at schools. And we did that not under a public order from the province. It was a decision made by the city of St. Albert, along with, I'm sure, most municipalities in the region and across Alberta. I actually was on a phone call today. I meet once a week now with the mid-sized mayors, we call ourselves. So the mayors of cities around our size. And so I always ask them the same thing. Are you opening up your playgrounds yet? And the resounding answer on my phone call today, 22 out of 22 said no. So, and that's not saying that they're not going to be open next week. We need to take this slowly. We've asked the province for advice on this, and we've asked the province for advice on many things. And the city of Leduc had a very detailed request that they have shared, and it addressed the tennis courts and the pickleball, et cetera. So they've shared that with all the municipalities in the region. But when it comes to playgrounds, the province's advice was that we could have them open, and but we would have to clean them between each use, which, if you can imagine, is almost nearly impossible to do. And that, you know, Kevin put a few numbers together, and we have 75 playgrounds in the city of St. Albert. So how do you clean them in between? So we will be having that conversation every week, because I know there's a huge desire to get the kids out on the playground equipment. And so at this point, the answer is not yet. So we're going to continue to consult with the province, continue to consult with the municipalities in the region to try to make a coordinated approach back into a normal life. And I think there's probably lots of other activities that you can do with your children to tire them out, et cetera. Especially with the warm weathers right now. I think Councillor Jolly was the one who mentioned that one of her kids was collecting worms in the backyard. So there's still stuff you can do outside. It's just we don't want you touching the bars of the equipment at the playgrounds. And you know, there was some conversation on one of the Facebook pages last week that they should be open or they shouldn't be open. And I watched the debate very closely, and it was a pretty down the middle. There's a lot of families that don't want them open, and there's a lot of families that think it's fine, especially because they're out in the sunlight. But I think you also have to remember that there's a lot of work and study that needs to go into this virus, and there's no clear evidence that ultraviolet light will kill it in 10 minutes or 2 hours. And there's a lot of unknowns, so we're just playing it safe.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Our next question is for Kevin. So what mental health supports are available for residents?
Okay, to help residents and staff cope with ongoing physical distancing, social isolation, and disruption of normal life caused by COVID, the Emergency Operations Center is developing short, medium, and long-term plans to provide residents with strengthened psychosocial resources. So these plans will be a collaboration between a number of city departments, including the Emergency Operations Center's Emergency Social Services Operations Section, and our Community Services, Recreation and Parks and Economic Development Departments, and HR, to provide insight to current operations and efforts in private and public organizations to avoid duplication of service and ensure coordinated support for psychosocial needs. So examples include mental health supports like easy access to resources, special needs assistance, business and employee supports, and other services. If you know of someone that requires support, call the community supports line at 780-459-1756, Monday to Friday between 8:30 to 4:30. For immediate support after hours, call the distress line at 780-482-HELP. Residents can also visit our website at stalbert.ca/COVID and click on the Help in Tough Times.
Thank you very much, Kevin. We have another question for the mayor. Could tennis courts be open for families, ensuring it is physical distancing?
I think that's probably an eventual first step to opening up the tennis courts. And many are probably aware that the city of Calgary has opened up their tennis courts, but only for singles, and you're not allowed to share a tennis ball, which I'm not exactly sure how that works. So at this time, and I mentioned some detailed questions that the city of Leduc had sent in, and the answers were shared across the region. At this time, the province is not recommending we open tennis courts. And so, you know, every municipality will have a different approach to this. And so Calgary is doing it different than we are. But at this time, we're going to keep them closed. And again, I'm going to say the conversation will be part of our weekly EAC meetings. And when we are confident that that rules will be followed, and we will probably open them up slowly for single use only, and maybe just for families, etc. But if you say just families, you have to enforce those kind of things. So I'm just going to ask residents to just be patient. It'll happen as soon as we feel it's able. And as I said when I talked to my colleagues, Calgary I think is the only one, and maybe Percy you can confirm, is Calgary the only one that's opened up their tennis courts? Everyone else is following the advice of the province, right?
That's correct. That's our understanding.
Yeah, thanks.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mayor. So we have another question here for Percy. How can I find out the latest statistics on COVID-19 in St. Albert?
You can actually find the information out on Alberta Health Services website. The website has a whole bunch of features about the province in terms of details, and there's a physical map on that website. The website address is https://COVID-19, so that's 19 stats.alberta.ca/, and you click down on the geospatial option and scroll down until you see the map, then use the zoom function to zero in on St. Albert. And statistics are just number, but some of the things that we really have to recognize, especially with this, those statistics remain and are people, and people's lives, people whose lives have been impacted, and families who've been impacted, especially for those unfortunate people who have died as a result of having COVID.
Thank you very much, Percy. So our next question is for the mayor. Can Mayor Herron talk more about her regional task force?
I can. So there's a lot of recovery conversations going on across the province and in various different sectors. I know lots of municipalities have task force such as St. Albert's does. But the seed was planted in my head a couple of weeks ago. I do touch base with the regional mayors every week and a half or so, just to see how we could approach recovery and how we're doing. So on Friday at the Edmonton Metro Region Board, we had a special meeting, and I put out a motion to explore the opportunity to set up a regional task force. And I think what's important is to remember is St. Albert, myself and Kevin and this council are very supportive of regional approaches to as many things as possible. I don't think anyone would ever think that we're not interconnected. So what's good for this region is good for St. Albert. So the St. Albert Task Force will be working on our local economy and maybe some ideas that affect just St. Albert, but things that also affect St. Albertans and our businesses are the airport and Alberta Industrial Heartland. So we need a coordinated, integrated response that will look at some of the economic opportunities in the region and also some of the social issues, because we have one of the issues that we were facing through this crisis was how we can help our vulnerable population, especially the homeless. And that can't be entirely up to the city of Edmonton to deal with. So, you know, a regional approach to some of these issues is imperative, in my opinion. So we have the staff at the Edmonton Metro Region Board coming up with the terms of reference and a briefing note that will come to a vote of the board on May 14th.
Thank you.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Our next question is for Percy. So how does the province's app help people in St. Albert?
Well, the province's app is called AB Trace Together, and it's a mobile app, and it's developed for both Google Android and the iPhones as well. And really what it does is it allows community driven contact tracing to allow the government to be able to trace the individuals you've been in contact. So it complements manual contact tracing, but what it does is it utilizes Bluetooth in the phones and allows communication between the phones, so that it's easier for those contact tracers to get information of individuals who've been sick and all those people who they've been in close contact with. You can get more information on that app by going to alberta.ca/COVID-19. And there's information and links on that website on how you can download that app for your specific phone.
Thank you very much, Percy. Our next question is for Kevin. Can I take my dog to the dog park?
Yes, our dog parks remain open. The city has removed doors and enclosure gates that are high traffic hand touch points at the off-leash boarded rinks, and at Lacombe Lake Dog Park as well, just again to help prevent the transmission of COVID, but the dog parks are open.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Kevin. Our next question is for the mayor. So my daughter is supposed to get married this summer. Should we postpone?
That is not the first time I've been asked that question. I think that's going to be a very personal decision. That's a hard one. I think that, if you're planning a small outdoor wedding of less than 15 people, you might be able to pull that off. And but if it's a big wedding over 15, I'm going to look up Percy, and he's going to, because I can see him, he's going to give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. But I'm pretty sure that Dr. Hinshaw has said that the restrictions on the big gatherings, so no more than 15, will be in place for the entire summer. That's where we're looking, Percy? He's nodding. Yeah. So I think it's probably a conversation you have with your daughter and her fiance on maybe scaling it back or postponing for the short term.
Thank you very much.
I wish them the best, because I feel bad for them.
Of course, it's difficult circumstances, I'm sure. Our next question is for Percy. Can I park my RV on the street?
At this current time, to help those people returning from out of province and out of country with their RVs, there's the bylaw has, you can apply for a permit for street parking for up to 20 days. Typically, the bylaw prohibits residents from parking RVs for more than 24 hours, but there is a permit that you can get for a minimum of 14 days to 20 days. And to be eligible for this, you've got to go online, apply for that permit online by visiting the city's website at https://statealbert.ca/approvals/OSCP/. And this will be posted on the city website, so it's easier to find the email address afterwards, instead of having to read through my what I'm saying about that email or that web address.
Thank you very much, Percy. And yes, just to remind everyone, so there will be a recording of this town hall available afterwards. And additionally, any questions that we aren't able to answer, we will make sure that we post those answers, and they will be posted as text, so you will be able to click to any links if need be. Our next question is for Kevin. Is Ray Gibbon Drive still going ahead?
Yes, it is. So the tender for the phase 1 construction, which is from the 137th Avenue intersection up to Leclerc Way, that's phase 1. The tenders for that closed on 30th. So we're currently evaluating the tenders received right now. And once we do award the contract, we are planning to begin construction in June, very soon actually.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So our next question is we're getting a lot of questions specifically around how can you tell the difference between, seasonal allergies, COVID-19 symptoms, different pieces like that. So I just wanted to reiterate that we are receiving a lot of questions like that currently. Alberta Health Services is the authority on this type of information. So please refer to alberta.ca/COVID-19 for this information, as we are not the experts here. So we don't want to be, translating or interpreting their answers. Please visit that website. They have lots of information available there. So we have another question here for Kevin. When will transit fares be reinstated?
We're not really able to answer that question at the moment. So council did eliminate the fares until the end of May, but no decision has yet been made on resumption of fares. Related to my earlier answer, we are monitoring when we start to see uptick in the volumes again. That's probably when we'll start reconsidering implementing the fares. So we will provide an answer on our website as soon as we can. So again, stay tuned to stalbert.ca/town hall.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Our next question is for Percy. So does St. Albert have a COVID-19 testing site?
No, at the current time, there is no testing site in St. Albert.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So just a reminder, if anyone has any further questions, we will take 1 or 2 more questions here. It's 7:53 and we will be ending this at 8 o'clock. So just feel free to submit your questions. If we can't answer them in this time period, we will make sure to get you an answer after this. Like I said, at stalbert.ca/town hall. So our potentially last question here is for Kevin Scoble. So what other capital projects are moving forward?
So actually, there's quite a number of capital projects still moving forward. We have 130 municipal capital projects valued at 175 million progressing, and 45 utility capital projects valued at 71 million. Council did defer $40 million of capital projects until June 30th, and another 7 million to September 30th, and actually 17 million until 2021. So we'll be coming up on reevaluating those projects that we've deferred very shortly at council here to see if we're going to continue deferring or take some of them on.
Thank you very much, Kevin. So I believe we're just taking our last question here. So again, if you have any further questions, please submit them in the Q&A and we will make sure we get you answers in the next couple weeks here on our website. So our last question here is for the mayor. So we all understand the community rules for physical distancing, but what are the family rules for grandparents, parents, and grandchildren?
The rules, and I hate calling them rules, but the suggestion and the guidelines from Alberta Health are that you maintain your 6 feet distance from anyone other than those living under your roof. So, if you have a roommate and you're not related, but you're still living on the same roof, then you can be within your 6 meters. But of course, there's those extended families, so grandparents and aunts and uncles that don't live under your roof. So you still need to stay distant from those. So we really just encourage you to be creative about how you interact. There's lots of ways to use technology. FaceTime, etc., reading books, playing games. And, you know, this weekend is Mother's Day. So I think there's going to be a lot of kids that are going to give their grandmother a gift, but, you know, you can absolutely decorate something and leave it on the front steps and ring the door and run and wave from the curb. But at this time, the rules, if you want to use that word, are still just to suggest that you keep your distance.
Thank you very much, Mayor. At this time, this marks the end of our Q&A. I'd just like to thank everyone for their questions. Any questions that we haven't been able to address tonight, we will be answering in the coming weeks on stalbert.ca/COVID-19, or you can call 780-459-1500 if you are looking for additional information or have additional questions. At this time, I will turn it over to Mayor Herron for some closing remarks.
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you to Kevin and Percy for helping me out with this town hall. And thank you, of course, to all the IT staff and the administrative staff that were, you know, putting the questions up for us and helping in the back end. It does, there's a lot of work that goes into doing these. Although I would like to, I'm starting to think that this new way of engaging with the public has a place in our post-COVID life. We held an open house on the skateboard park renewal and water park that has had an overwhelming you know, engagement. So, you know, we might be looking at combining our efforts for engagement going forward. You know, I think we got more people on the first town hall meeting than we ever get at a budget town hall meeting in person. So there's definitely a way we can incorporate some of that. So thank you to everyone who's watching at home and to help put this all together. I'll just close off with a few notes. I hope you found it valuable. I hope we've answered your questions. If you have any questions that we didn't get to, please feel free to send them to us and we'll do our best to answer them. And I guess really just need to thank the residents of St. Albert. Every day I'm faced with actions of caring and community, and it warms my heart. And we have done such a great job. The positives have far outweighed the negatives in the community spirit I've seen in St. Albert. So I appreciate everything that everyone's doing. I said on Facebook this morning that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We just have to stay the course to get to the end of the tunnel. So please be diligent. We need to make sure there's no second wave here in St. Albert. The faster we can get through this, the faster we can get back to a new normal. So thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.